When the mafia boss you married for 8 years hands you divorce papers without a word, you don't cry. You finally wake up. Evelyn Carter thought she understood her husband's world of power and silence. But when Adrian Voss disappeared on their anniversary and returned only to replace her with a woman who seemed too perfect to be real, she realized the truth. She had never been his wife. She had been his placeholder. This is the story of a woman who walked away from an empire built on lies and chose something more dangerous than power, the truth. If you're hooked, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. The house was too quiet. Evelyn Carter stood in the center of the dining room, candlelight flickering across the polished mahogany table she'd spent an hour setting. The wine, a 2015 Bordeaux, Adrian's favorite, sat breathing in its crystal decanter. The roasted duck, glazed with cherry reduction, cooled beneath silver domes. 8 years, 8 anniversaries. And this one, she'd promised herself, would be different. This one, she would finally say the things she'd been holding back. I miss you. I miss us. I miss feeling like I matter. But Adrian wasn't there. She checked her phone again. 9:47 p.m. No missed calls, no explanations, just one message sent 3 hours ago, as cold and efficient as everything else about him lately. Working late, don't wait up. 4 words, not even an apology. Evelyn set the phone down with trembling fingers and stared at the empty chair across from her, the chair that had been empty more nights than not over the past year. She told herself it was business. Adrian Voss was a man whose empire demanded attention, whose name carried weight in rooms she would never enter. Import-export, he called it. Investments, acquisitions. She'd learned early in their marriage not to ask too many questions, but tonight the silence felt different, heavier, final. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat down alone. The first sip tasted like defeat. Colorado in October was beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. The aspen trees outside their estate blazed gold and crimson, and the mountains stood sharp against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Evelyn had loved this house once. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the stone fireplace, the sprawling deck that overlooked the valley. Adrian had bought it for her as a wedding gift, back when his smiles came easier and his touch lingered. Now it felt like a museum, beautiful, expensive, and completely lifeless. She woke the next morning to an empty bed. Adrian's side was still made. He hadn't come home at all. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to breathe through it. This isn't new, she reminded herself. He's done this before. But when she walked downstairs and found his briefcase gone, his keys missing from the hook by the door, something cold settled in her stomach. She called his office. The receptionist's voice was professional, clipped. Mr. Voss is unavailable. This is his wife. A pause. I understand, Mrs. Voss, but Mr. Voss left instructions not to be disturbed. Evelyn's grip tightened on the phone. When will he be back? I'm afraid I don't have that information. The line went dead. Evelyn stood in the marble foyer, staring at her reflection in the mirror across from her. She looked pale, tired, like a woman who'd been waiting so long she'd forgotten what she was waiting for. She grabbed her coat and keys. Adrian's office was downtown, a sleek glass tower that rose above the city like a monument to ambition. Evelyn had only been there a handful of times. Adrian preferred to keep his work separate from his home life. Or maybe he just preferred to keep her separate. The lobby was all polished chrome and modern art, the kind of space designed to intimidate. Evelyn walked past the reception desk without stopping, ignoring the security guard's startled call behind her. She knew where Adrian's office was. 18th floor, corner suite. But when the elevator doors opened, she froze. The hallway was dark. The glass doors to Adrian's suite stood open, and inside the space was empty. Not just empty, cleared. The desk was gone, the bookshelves bare. Even the expensive leather chair he'd imported from Italy had vanished. Mrs. Voss? She turned. A young woman in a navy blazer stood behind her, holding a tablet, her expression carefully neutral. Where is everything? Evelyn's voice came out sharper than she intended. The woman hesitated. Mr. Voss relocated his operations. The lease on this space ended last week. Relocated where? I'm not authorized to share that information. Evelyn stepped closer, her pulse hammering. I'm his wife. The woman's eyes flickered with something, pity, maybe, or discomfort. I'm sorry, Mrs. Voss, I really can't help you. Evelyn felt the ground tilt beneath her. He'd moved his entire office without telling her, without even a word. She drove home in a daze, her hands numb on the steering wheel. The sky was overcast now, heavy with the promise of snow. By the time she pulled into the driveway, the first flakes were beginning to fall, and Adrian's car was parked in front of the house. Relief and anger collided in her chest. She threw the car into park and rushed inside, her breath coming fast. Adrian? He was in their bedroom, standing in front of the open closet with a leather duffel bag on the bed. He didn't look up when she entered, didn't stop packing. Where the hell have you been? The words came out raw, desperate. I went to your office. It's empty, Adrian. What's going on? He folded a shirt with mechanical precision and placed it in the bag. I've been meaning to talk to you. Her stomach dropped. About what? Finally, he turned to face her. Adrian Voss was 43, tall and lean, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes the color of steel. He'd always been handsome in a controlled, restrained way, like a blade sheathed in expensive leather. But now, looking at him, Evelyn saw nothing. No warmth, no regret, just cold, calculated distance. I'm leaving, he said simply. The room spun. What? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, setting it on the dresser between them. Divorce papers. My attorney will handle everything. You'll be taken care of financially. The house, the settlement. It's all outlined inside. Evelyn stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. You're joking. I'm not. 8 years, Adrian. 8 years, and you're just... Her voice cracked. You're just done? He zipped the duffel bag closed, his movements calm, deliberate. I should have done this sooner. The cruelty of it, the sheer casual cruelty, hit her like a physical blow. Why? Because you were never what I needed. She flinched. What does that even mean? Adrian finally met her eyes, and what she saw there was worse than anger. It was indifference. You're a good woman, Evelyn, kind, steady. But that's not enough. I need someone who understands my world, someone who can stand beside me, not behind me, someone who can handle the pressure, the expectations, the reality of who I am. I've stood beside you for 8 years. No, he said quietly. You've existed in the background, and I don't need that anymore. Evelyn's hands shook. Is there someone else? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. She should have screamed, should have thrown something, demanded answers, refused to let him walk away so easily. But instead she just stood there, frozen, as Adrian picked up his bag and walked past her like she was already gone. At the door, he paused. Sign the papers, Evelyn. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. And then he was gone. The sound of his car starting, pulling away, fading into the distance. It was the loneliest sound she'd ever heard. Evelyn sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the envelope on the dresser. Her hands moved on autopilot, pulling the papers free, unfolding them. Legal jargon, asset division, terms and conditions. And at the bottom, Adrian's signature. Already signed, already decided, like she'd never mattered at all. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of disbelief and numbness. Evelyn called Adrian's phone. It went straight to voicemail. She called his business associates, old friends, anyone who might know where he'd gone. No one would tell her anything, or maybe they didn't know either. She tried to keep up appearances, went to work at the small marketing firm where she'd been employed for the past 3 years, smiled when her coworkers asked how she was, pretended everything was fine. But at night, alone in the house that suddenly felt enormous and suffocating, she couldn't escape the questions. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Who is she? Because there was someone else. She knew it with a certainty that settled deep in her bones. Adrian Voss didn't do anything without a plan. He didn't leave unless he had somewhere better to go. And then, 2 weeks after he walked out, Evelyn found out exactly where he'd gone. Shuts. It was a Friday afternoon. Evelyn was cleaning out the office Adrian had used at home, another space he'd abandoned without explanation. Most of his files were gone, but she found a forgotten folder wedged behind the desk. Inside were printouts, articles, society pages, and photographs. Her hands trembled as she pulled them free. The first image showed Adrian standing on a terrace, a champagne flute in hand, smiling at a woman beside him. She was stunning, tall, blonde, elegant in a way that seemed effortless. Her dress was designer, her jewelry glittered under the lights, and her hand rested possessively on Adrian's arm. The caption beneath the photo read, "Adrian Voss and Lillian Cross celebrate their engagement at the Voss Estate Gala." Evelyn's breath stopped. Engagement? She flipped to the next photo. Adrian and Lillian cutting a cake, surrounded by applauding guests. Another showed them dancing, his hand at the small of her back, her head tilted toward him in a way that looked intimate, familiar. The date on the article was from 6 months ago. 6 months. Evelyn's vision blurred. He'd been planning this for half a year, maybe longer. While she'd been setting anniversary dinners and waiting for him to come home, he'd been building a new life with someone else. She kept reading, her hand shaking so badly the papers rattled. Lillian Cross, heiress to the Cross Industries fortune. A woman whose family moved in the same circles as Adrian's world, the world he'd always kept Evelyn at arm's length from. Lillian wasn't just beautiful, she was connected, powerful, useful. And according to the final article, dated just 5 days ago, they were already married. Adrian Voss weds Lillian Cross in private ceremony. The room tilted. Evelyn gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. He hadn't just left her, he'd replaced her, seamlessly, completely, like she'd never existed at all. She didn't cry. Not then. Not when the shock wore off and the anger set in. Not even when she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through every moment of their marriage, searching for the point where it all went wrong. But something inside her shifted, hardened. Adrian had made his choice, and now Evelyn would make hers. Date. The next morning, she hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Lowe, a wiry man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for discretion. They met in a coffee shop on the edge of town, away from anyone who might recognize her. "I need to know everything about Lillian Cross," Evelyn said without preamble. Marcus studied her over the rim of his mug. "You sure you want to go down this road, Mrs. Voss?" "I'm sure." He nodded slowly. "It'll take some time, and it won't be cheap." "I don't care. I need the truth." "All right." He pulled out a notepad. "What do you know so far?" Evelyn told him everything, the divorce, the photographs, the articles. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he sat back and exhaled. "Lillian Cross. Yeah, I know the name. She's been on the social scene for a few years now. Big philanthropist. Gallery openings, charity galas, that kind of thing." "What else?" "That's the thing." Marcus tapped his pen against the notepad. "Not much. Her background's clean, almost too clean, like someone scrubbed it." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "I mean, most people leave a trail. Social media, old friends, employment records. Lillian's got all the right pieces, birth certificate, education credentials, financial history, but it's all tidy. No gaps, no mess. It reads like a resume, not a life." "Can you dig deeper?" Marcus smiled faintly. "That's what you're paying me for." Over the next 2 weeks, Evelyn threw herself into rebuilding the pieces of her life. She signed the divorce papers. There was no point in dragging it out. She started therapy, trying to untangle the knot of emotions that threatened to drown her. And she waited. Waited for Marcus to call. Waited for answers. Waited for the truth. And then, on a cold Tuesday evening, her phone rang. "Mrs. Voss?" Marcus's voice was tense. "We need to meet. Tonight." They met at the same coffee shop, but this time Marcus looked different, uneasy. He slid a thick folder across the table toward her. "You were right," he said quietly. "Lillian Cross isn't who she says she is." Evelyn's heart pounded. "What did you find?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice low. "Her real name is Lily Cunningham. She was born in Detroit, grew up in foster care. Dropped out of high school at 16. For the next 10 years, she moved around, waitressing, bartending, nothing stable, and then about 7 years ago, she vanished. Vanished? Completely. No employment records, no social media, nothing. And then 3 years later, she reappeared as Lillian Cross. New name, new background, new everything. Someone paid a lot of money to erase Lily Cunningham and build Lillian Cross from scratch. Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were photographs, old, grainy images of a younger woman with darker hair and tired eyes. She barely looked like the polished, elegant woman Adrian had married, but it was her. "Who did this?" Evelyn whispered. Marcus met her eyes. "I don't know yet, but whoever it was, they had resources. The kind of resources your husband has." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Adrian hadn't just met Lillian, he'd created her. Evelyn drove home in a fog, her mind spinning. She didn't know what to do with this information, didn't know what it meant, but when she walked into the house, her phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "We should talk, tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Cafe, come alone, L." Evelyn stared at the screen, her blood running cold. L. Lillian, the woman who had stolen her husband. The woman who had erased her entire existence to become someone new. Wanted to meet. Evelyn's hand shook as she typed a single word in response. "Why?" The reply came instantly. "Because you deserve the truth, and so do I." Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through 1,000 scenarios in her mind. What could Lillian possibly want? Was this some kind of trap? A game? Or was it something else? When 2 p.m. finally arrived, Evelyn walked into Riverside Cafe with her pulse hammering in her ears. The space was quiet, upscale, the kind of place where conversations stayed private. And there, seated at a corner table, was Lillian Cross. She looked even more beautiful in person, effortlessly elegant in a cream cashmere sweater and tailored slacks, her blonde hair swept into a low chignon. But when she looked up and met Evelyn's eyes, there was something raw there, something afraid. "Thank you for coming," Lillian said quietly. Evelyn sat down slowly, her guard up. "What do you want?" Lillian's hands were wrapped around a cup of tea, her knuckles white. "I want to tell you the truth, about Adrian, about me, about all of this." "Why?" Lillian's laugh was bitter. "Because I think we've both been played." Evelyn's breath caught, and for the next hour, Lillian told her everything. Lillian's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. They held the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too many secrets for too long. "I met Adrian 4 years ago," she began, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "I wasn't Lillian Cross then. I was nobody, just another woman trying to survive in a city that chews people up and spits them out." Evelyn sat perfectly still, her heart pounding against her ribs. She wanted to hate this woman, the woman who had taken her place, her husband, her life. But something in Lillian's expression stopped her. Something that looked almost like kinship. "I was working at a hotel bar in Denver," Lillian continued. "High-end place. The kind where men in expensive suits came to make deals they didn't want recorded. Adrian came in one night with a group of associates. I served them whiskey and kept my mouth shut, like I always did. But he noticed me." "How romantic," Evelyn said, her voice sharper than she intended. Lillian's smile was humorless. "That's what I thought too, at first." She paused, her gaze distant. "He came back the next week. Alone. We talked. He was charming, attentive, interested in who I was, or at least that's what I believed. Looking back, I realized he was interviewing me. For what? For this." Lillian gestured vaguely at herself, at the perfect veneer she presented to the world. "He told me he could change my life, that I had potential, but I needed refinement, education, polish. He said he saw something in me that no one else had ever seen." Evelyn's stomach turned. She'd heard those words before. Adrian had said something similar to her once, years ago, when they'd first started dating. "You're different from other women. You have something real." "He offered me a deal," Lillian said. "He would pay for everything. New identity, education, etiquette training, wardrobe, connections. He would transform me into someone who could move in his world. In exchange, I would become exactly what he needed. A wife. An asset." Lillian's voice cracked slightly. He was very clear about the terms. This wasn't about love. It was about compatibility. He needed someone who understood the game, who could play the part without questioning the rules. Someone who wouldn't ask where he went at night or why his business associates looked like they'd kill you if you said the wrong thing. Evelyn felt cold. And you agreed? I was 28 years old, working 3 jobs, living in a studio apartment with black mold on the ceiling. Lillian's laugh was bitter. A man offered me a fairy tale. What would you have done? The question hung between them, accusatory and raw. When did he tell you about me? Evelyn asked quietly. Lillian's eyes met hers. 6 months in, after I'd already signed the contracts, after I'd already started the transformation. He said you were incompatible, that the marriage had been a mistake, that you didn't understand his world and never would. He made it sound like a business merger that hadn't worked out. Did you ask if I knew? If I'd agreed to this? Lillian's silence was answer enough. He told me you'd be taken care of, she said finally, that you'd get a generous settlement, that you'd be fine. He made it sound clean, painless. It wasn't. I know. Lillian's voice was barely a whisper. I know that now. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Every word out of Lillian's mouth was a confirmation of what she'd already suspected, that Adrian Voss was not a man who loved. He was a man who acquired, who calculated, who built his life like a chess game, moving pieces around until everything aligned exactly as he wanted. And she'd been a piece he no longer needed. Why are you telling me this? Evelyn asked. Why now? Lillian's hands trembled as she set down her teacup. Because I think he's doing it again. The words sent ice through Evelyn's veins. What do you mean? Lillian reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, her movements jerky, anxious. She scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward Evelyn. It was a photograph. Adrian standing in what looked like a penthouse apartment, his arm around a woman Evelyn didn't recognize. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair and striking features, and she was looking at Adrian the way Evelyn probably once had, like he was salvation. Her name is Natasha Raines, Lillian said. She's a lawyer, smart, ambitious, hungry for success. Adrian's been mentoring her for the past 8 months. Evelyn's throat tightened. Mentoring. That's what he calls it. Lillian's voice was hollow. But I've seen this before. I lived this before. The private dinners, the gifts, the way he talks about her potential. He's grooming her, Evelyn, just like he groomed me. Does she know about you? Not yet, but she will, when the time is right, when he's ready to move on. Evelyn stared at the photograph, her mind spinning. Why would he do this? You're everything he said he wanted. You're perfect. Lillian laughed, and the sound was broken. That's the problem. I'm too perfect. I played the role so well that I forgot it was a role. And when I started asking questions, when I started wanting more than just the script he wrote for me, I became a liability. What kind of questions? Lillian's eyes darkened. The kind you don't ask men like Adrian Voss. Where does the money really come from? Why do his associates carry guns? Why does he disappear for days without explanation? I thought I could handle his world, but I was wrong. And now I'm trapped in it. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. What happened when you asked? He reminded me of the contracts I signed, the NDAs, the agreements that legally bind me to silence about his business operations. He reminded me that Lillian Cross doesn't exist without him, that if I step out of line, if I cause problems, he can destroy the life he gave me just as easily as he created it. He's threatening you. He doesn't need to threaten. The cage is already built. Lillian's voice was steady, but her hand shook. I'm his wife. His perfect accessory, his proof that he's civilized and respectable. But I'm not a person to him. I'm an investment, and the moment I stop being profitable, he'll liquidate me. Evelyn's mind reeled. She thought Adrian was cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. She thought their marriage had failed because she wasn't enough. But this was something else entirely. This was calculated cruelty, systematic control. Why are you telling me all this? Evelyn asked again. What do you want from me? Lillian met her eyes, and for the first time, Evelyn saw real fear there. I want out, Lillian whispered, but I can't do it alone. The prenup I signed is ironclad. If I leave, I get nothing. Worse than nothing. I lose my identity, my credibility, everything. Adrian made sure of that, but you... She leaned forward. You were married to him for 8 years. You know things. You've seen things. Together, we might have enough to... To what? Evelyn interrupted. Take him down? Expose him? Do you have any idea what kind of man he is? What he's capable of? Better than you think, Lillian said quietly. I've seen things you haven't. Things that keep me awake at night. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Like what? Lillian glanced around the cafe, as if checking for listening ears, then leaned in closer. 3 months ago, one of Adrian's business partners disappeared. A man named Viktor Sokolov. They'd been having disputes. Something about territory, shipments, I don't know the details. But Viktor started making noise, threatening to go to the authorities. And then, one day, he was just gone. People disappear all the time. His body turned up in a ravine 2 weeks later. Lillian's voice was barely audible. The official report said it was a hiking accident, but I heard Adrian on the phone the night before they found him. He was talking to someone, giving instructions. And when I asked him about Viktor, he looked me in the eye and said, "Some problems solve themselves." The cafe suddenly felt too warm, too close. Evelyn's hands were clammy. You think Adrian killed him? I think Adrian ordered it. Lillian's eyes were haunted. And I think I'm married to a man who sees murder as just another business transaction. Evelyn sat back, her mind racing. She'd always known Adrian's business wasn't entirely legitimate. The whispered phone calls, the associates who looked like criminals, the unexplained wealth. She'd chosen not to look too closely, told herself it wasn't her concern. But this, if that's true, Evelyn said slowly, then going after him is suicide. Men like that don't just let people walk away, they eliminate threats. I know. Lillian's voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. That's why I need help. That's why I need someone who understands what he is. Someone who's already lost everything and has nothing left to fear. Evelyn stared at her, this woman who had stolen her husband, her life, her future. This woman who was now sitting across from her, broken and terrified, asking for an alliance. I don't trust you, Evelyn said finally. I don't trust you either, Lillian replied. But we're both his victims, and we're both running out of time. Before Evelyn could respond, Lillian's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. I have to go, she said quickly, standing. He's calling. If I don't answer, he'll know something's wrong. Wait! But Lillian was already moving toward the door, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice shifting into something smooth and pleasant. Hi, darling. Yes, I'm just finishing up at the gallery. I'll be home soon. And then she was gone, leaving Evelyn alone with a cold cup of coffee and 1,000 unanswered questions. Evelyn sat in the cafe for another hour, her mind spinning. Everything Lillian had told her felt both impossible and inevitable. Adrian as a criminal. Adrian as a killer. Adrian as a man who built lives and destroyed them with the same cold efficiency. She thought about the 8 years they'd spent together, the nights he came home late, smelling of expensive cologne and something metallic, the phone calls he took in other rooms, his voice low and dangerous, the way his associates looked at her, not with respect, but with pity. She'd been so naive, so willfully blind. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Found something else. Call me. Evelyn's hand shook as she dialed. What is it? She asked when he picked up. Lillian Cross isn't the only identity Adrian's paid to create. Marcus's voice was grim. I found 2 others. Both women, both around the same age, both with similar backgrounds. Working class, vulnerable, easy to erase. One disappeared about 7 years ago, the other 5 years ago. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Disappeared how? Just, gone. No records, no trail, nothing. It's like they never existed. What are you saying? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I'm saying your ex-husband has a pattern, and Lillian Cross might not be his first wife. She might just be the first one who survived. The world tilted. I need to see everything you found, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. Tonight. Already on my way. They met at Evelyn's house, and Marcus spread his findings across the dining room table, the same table where she'd set that anniversary dinner a lifetime ago. Photographs, documents, financial records, a timeline of Adrian's life that looked more like a crime novel than a marriage. This woman, Marcus said, pointing to a photograph of a redhead with tired eyes. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, worked as a waitress in Chicago. Adrian met her 8 years ago, shortly before he married you. 6 months later, she disappeared. Her family filed a missing persons report, but it went nowhere. Maybe she just left, Evelyn said, even as her stomach churned. Maybe. Marcus pulled out another photograph. This one's name was Rebecca Tate. She was a nurse in Seattle. Adrian was linked to her about 5 years ago, right around the time you said your marriage started falling apart. She disappeared too. No body, no evidence, just gone. Evelyn stared at the photographs, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. You think he killed them? I think he's dangerous, and I think you and Lillian are playing a very risky game. I'm not playing anything, Evelyn said sharply. I just want the truth. The truth might get you killed. Then I'll die knowing what I'm dying for. She met his eyes. Keep digging. I need to know everything. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You're tougher than you look, Mrs. Voss. I'm not Mrs. Voss anymore, she said quietly. I'm just Evelyn. That night, alone in the house, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Sarah and Rebecca, about Lillian, about all the women Adrian had touched, used, discarded. She thought about the divorce papers she'd signed, the settlement money sitting in her account. Blood money, maybe. The price of her silence. But she wasn't silent anymore. Her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Another unknown number. He knows we met. Be careful. L. Evelyn's heart hammered as she typed back. How does he know? The response came quickly. He has eyes everywhere. Don't trust anyone. Don't call me again. I'll reach out when it's safe. And then nothing. Evelyn sat in the darkness, listening to the house creak and settle around her. She thought about running, leaving Colorado, changing her name, disappearing the way Sarah and Rebecca had. But something in her refused. She'd spent 8 years being invisible, being silent, being exactly what Adrian wanted her to be. She'd spent 8 years waiting for a man who never really saw her. She was done waiting. The next morning, Evelyn called her lawyer. I want to reopen the divorce settlement, she said without preamble. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, was quiet for a moment. Why? You signed the papers. The agreement is generous. I don't care about generous. I want a full disclosure of Adrian's assets, all of them. Evelyn, the settlement is already finalized. Unless you have grounds to challenge it. I have grounds. Evelyn's voice was steel. I have evidence that Adrian concealed assets during the divorce proceedings. I want a forensic accountant to go through everything. Patricia sighed. This is going to get ugly. I'm counting on it. Sob. Within 48 hours, the legal machinery was in motion. Patricia filed a motion to reopen the case, citing suspected fraud and concealment of assets. Adrian's lawyers responded with outrage, demanding the motion be dismissed, but Evelyn didn't back down. And 3 days later, her phone rang. It was Adrian. She stared at the screen, her pulse pounding, then answered. Evelyn. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man in complete control. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. There was an edge now just beneath the surface. Whatever you think you're doing, stop. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. You don't understand what you're playing with. Then explain it to me, Adrian. Tell me about Sarah Mitchell. Tell me about Rebecca Tate. Tell me about all the women you've erased. The line went silent. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Yes. The word was sharp, dangerous. It matters very much. Evelyn's hand trembled, but she kept her voice steady. Stay away from me, Adrian, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. You have no idea what kind of man I am. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. And that was somehow more terrifying than anger. But you're about to find out. The line went dead. Evelyn stood in the center of her living room, the phone still pressed to her ear, her entire body shaking. She'd just declared war on a man who made people disappear. But so, that night, Evelyn packed a bag and checked into a hotel under a false name. She paid in cash, parked her car 3 blocks away, and told no one where she was going. But lying in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, she realized something. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. For 8 years, Adrian had controlled her life, her choices, her sense of self-worth. He'd made her feel small, invisible, insufficient. But she wasn't small. She wasn't invisible. She was a woman who'd survived being erased. And now she was going to make sure Adrian Voss faced the consequences of every life he'd destroyed. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I can help. Meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. Union Station, Platform 7. Come alone." Someone who knows the truth. Evelyn stared at the message, her mind racing. It could be a trap. It could be Adrian luring her into the open. Or it could be someone who finally had the answers she needed. She typed a single word. "Who are you?" The response came instantly. A ghost he thought he'd buried. Evelyn's breath caught. Sarah. Or Rebecca. Someone who'd survived. She looked at the message for a long time, weighing the risks, calculating the odds. Then she typed back. "I'll be there." Union Station was crowded the next morning, full of commuters and travelers rushing to catch trains. Evelyn stood on Platform 7, her heart hammering, her eyes scanning the crowd. And then she saw her. A woman in her mid-30s, auburn hair tucked under a baseball cap, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked ordinary, forgettable. But when she walked up to Evelyn, there was something in her posture, something wary, watchful, that told Evelyn this woman knew how to disappear. "You're Evelyn Carter," the woman said. Not a question. "Who are you?" The woman glanced around, then gestured toward a nearby bench. They sat, and she pulled off her sunglasses. Evelyn's breath stopped. It was her, the woman from Marcus's photograph, Sarah Mitchell. "You're alive," Evelyn whispered. "Barely." Sarah's smile was bitter. "And only because I ran before he could finish what he started." "What happened?" Sarah's eyes were haunted. "I thought I was special. I thought Adrian loved me. But then I started noticing things. Money moving in strange ways, phone calls in the middle of the night, men who looked at me like I was already dead. And then one night I overheard him talking to someone. He was planning to get rid of me. Clean, permanent." Evelyn's hands clenched. "How did you escape?" "I didn't." Sarah's voice was flat. "He drugged me. I woke up in a car somewhere in the mountains." He was going to make it look like an accident, a woman who'd gone hiking and never came back. "But I fought, I got away, and I've been running ever since." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Sarah laughed, the sound hollow. "And tell them what? That my boyfriend tried to kill me? I had no proof, no witnesses. And Adrian has connections everywhere, cops, judges, politicians. I'd be dead before I finished giving my statement." "Then why contact me now?" Sarah met her eyes. "Because I heard you were fighting back, and I want him to pay for what he did. To me, to Rebecca, to all of us." "Rebecca's dead?" "I think so." Sarah's voice cracked. "I tried to warn her, but I was too late. She disappeared 6 months after I did. They never found her body." Evelyn felt sick. "We can stop him," Sarah said urgently. "But we need evidence, real evidence, the kind that even his lawyers can't bury." "What kind of evidence?" Sarah pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "Financial records, encrypted files I copied before I ran. I didn't know what they meant then, but I kept them. I think they're proof of money laundering, maybe worse." Evelyn stared at the tiny device. "Why give this to me?" "Because you're still in the system. You have lawyers, resources, legitimacy. I'm a ghost. But you..." Sarah's eyes burned with intensity. "You can make people listen." Evelyn took the flash drive, her hand trembling. "There's something else you should know," Sarah said quietly. "Adrian isn't working alone. He has partners, dangerous people. If you go after him, you go after all of them, and they will come for you." "Let them," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "I'm done running." Sarah studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Be careful, Evelyn. Men like Adrian don't lose. They eliminate the competition." "Then I'll make sure I'm not competition." Evelyn stood, slipping the flash drive into her pocket. "I'll make sure I'm the reckoning." Evelyn sat in Patricia Chen's office, the flash drive Sarah had given her resting on the polished desk between them like a loaded weapon. Patricia stared at it, her expression unreadable, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. "Where did you get this?" Patricia asked finally. "Does it matter?" "It matters if we're going to use it in court. Chain of custody, authenticity, admissibility, all of it matters. Patricia leaned forward. Evelyn, if this came from someone with questionable credibility, or if it was obtained illegally, it came from someone Adrian tried to kill, Evelyn said quietly. Someone who's been hiding for years because she knows what he's capable of. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. That's a serious allegation. It's the truth. Evelyn's voice was steady, but her hands trembled in her lap. Sarah Mitchell. She disappeared 8 years ago, right before Adrian married me. Everyone thought she was dead, but she escaped. And she kept evidence. Patricia picked up the flash drive, turning it over in her hands. If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is criminal. We need to involve the authorities. No. The word came out sharper than Evelyn intended. Not yet. Adrian has connections everywhere. Police, prosecutors, judges. If we go to them too early, he'll bury it. And us. Then what do you want me to do with this? Evelyn met her eyes. I want you to find someone who can decrypt it. Someone we can trust. I want to know exactly what's on there before we make our next move. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, her lawyer's mind clearly working through the risks. This could blow up in our faces. It already has, Evelyn said. The question is whether we're going to let him win. Patricia exhaled slowly, then nodded. I know someone. A forensic accountant who specializes in complex financial crimes. He's discreet, and he doesn't scare easily. But this is going to take time. How much time? A week, maybe 2. We don't have 2 weeks. Then we'll work faster. Patricia slipped the flash drive into her desk drawer and locked it. In the meantime, you need to be careful. If Adrian suspects you have this, he already suspects. Evelyn stood, gathering her coat. He called me, threatened me, told me I didn't know what I was playing with. Patricia's face paled. Evelyn, maybe you should consider protective custody, or at least higher security. I'm not hiding. Evelyn's voice was firm. I've been invisible for 8 years. I'm done being afraid. As she walked out of the office, Patricia called after her. Evelyn, be smart. Courage without caution is just suicide. But Evelyn was already gone. She returned to the hotel, her mind racing with possibilities and dangers. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, and as she approached her room, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The door was slightly ajar. She'd locked it. She was sure of it. Evelyn's pulse hammered as she pushed the door open slowly, her hand fumbling for her phone. The room had been searched, not ransacked, but carefully, methodically examined. Her suitcase was open, clothes folded differently than she'd left them. The drawers were closed, but not quite aligned. Even the pillows on the bed were arranged wrong. Someone had been looking for something, and they'd been professional enough to almost hide it. Evelyn backed out of the room, her hands shaking, and pulled out her phone to call Marcus. Before she could dial, a voice spoke from behind her. I wouldn't do that if I were you. She spun around. A man stood in the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive and perfectly tailored. His face was unremarkable, forgettable, but his eyes were cold and calculating. He held no weapon, but he didn't need one. Everything about him screamed danger. Who are you? Evelyn demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Someone who's trying to save your life. He gestured toward the elevator. We need to talk. Somewhere more private. I'm not going anywhere with you. He sighed, as if she were being unreasonable. Your room's been compromised. Your phone's probably tapped. And you have about 5 minutes before Adrian's people figure out you're not inside. So you can come with me and live, or you can stay here and become another missing person. Your choice. Evelyn's mind raced. Every instinct screamed not to trust this man. But he was right about one thing. Staying here was suicide. Who do you work for? She asked. Myself, mostly. He started walking toward the stairwell. But right now, I'm working for someone who wants Adrian Voss to go down just as much as you do. Who? He glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. Someone with the resources to make it happen. Now move. Against every rational thought, Evelyn followed. They emerged from the stairwell into the parking garage, and the man led her to a black SUV with tinted windows. He opened the back door and Evelyn hesitated. Get in, he said, or don't, but decide fast. She got in. The interior was clean, sterile, with leather seats and no personal touches. The man slid into the driver's seat and pulled out of the garage, driving with the kind of calm precision that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times before. "My name is Cole," he said, his eyes on the road. "And before you ask, no, that's not my real name, but it's what you can call me." "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere Adrian can't find you." "That's not an answer." Cole's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "You're sharper than he gave you credit for. That's good. You're going to need that. Stop talking in riddles and tell me who you work for." Cole was quiet for a moment, navigating through downtown traffic with practiced ease. 5 years ago, I worked for Adrian Voss. I was part of his security team, the kind of security that doesn't show up on any official payroll. I did things I'm not proud of, cleaned up messes, made problems disappear. Evelyn's stomach turned. "You killed people." "I protected assets." His voice was flat, emotionless. "But then I saw what he did to Rebecca Tate, how he used her, manipulated her, and then decided she was a liability. I was ordered to take care of it, and I refused." "Why?" "Because there are lines even I won't cross." Cole's jaw tightened. "I got out, disappeared, started working for people who want to bring men like Adrian down, and when I heard you were making noise, that you were gathering evidence, I volunteered to make sure you survived long enough to use it." "You expect me to believe you had a crisis of conscience?" "I expect you to stay alive long enough to destroy him." Cole pulled into an underground parking garage and killed the engine. "Welcome to your new safe house." The building was nondescript, industrial, the kind of place that wouldn't draw attention. Cole led her to an elevator that required a key card, then up to the 3rd floor. The apartment inside was functional, clean, minimalist, with reinforced windows and multiple locks on the door. "You'll stay here until we figure out our next move," Cole said, checking the windows. "Don't leave. Don't call anyone. Don't use your credit cards or access your bank accounts. As far as the world is concerned, you've vanished." "For how long?" "Until we have enough to bury him." Evelyn sank onto the couch, exhaustion and adrenaline warring inside her. What if it's not enough? What if he's too powerful to touch? Cole turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something almost human in his eyes. "Then we make sure the evidence gets out anyway. We make sure the world knows what he is, even if we don't survive to see it." It wasn't reassuring, but it was honest. For 3 days, Evelyn stayed in the safe house, cut off from the world. Cole came and went, bringing food and updates. Patricia was working with the forensic accountant. Marcus was digging deeper into Adrian's business network, and Sarah had gone underground again, too afraid to stay in contact. But on the 4th day, Cole arrived with news that changed everything. "The flash drive," he said, setting his laptop on the coffee table. "It's a gold mine. Financial records, shell companies, offshore accounts. Adrian's been laundering money for a crime syndicate for over a decade. Millions of dollars moving through legitimate businesses, real estate, import-export, investment firms, all of it clean on the surface, all of it dirty underneath." Evelyn stared at the screen, the numbers and names blurring together. "Is it enough?" "It's enough to get the FBI interested, maybe even enough to bring RICO charges." Cole's expression was grim. "But there's a problem." "What?" "Adrian's not the top of the pyramid. He's middle management. The people he works for, they're dangerous. International players with resources that make Adrian look like a small-time operator. If we go after him, we go after them, and they will retaliate." Evelyn's hands clenched. "Then we make sure the retaliation doesn't matter. We burn it all down." Cole studied her for a long moment. "You're braver than I thought." "I'm angrier than I thought." He almost smiled. "Anger's good. Anger keeps you alive." Before Evelyn could respond, Cole's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. "What is it?" Evelyn asked. "Lillian." He turned the phone toward her. It was a news article, just published an hour ago. The headline made Evelyn's blood run cold. "Lillian Voss hospitalized after suspected overdose. Husband calls it a tragic accident." Evelyn's hands shook as she read the article. Lillian had been found unconscious in her home, pills scattered around her, a half-empty bottle of wine on the nightstand. Adrian had released a statement expressing his devastation, calling it a cry for help he hadn't seen coming. But Evelyn knew better. "He tried to kill her," she whispered. "Or he's setting the stage," Cole said. making her look unstable, unreliable. If she tries to testify against him, he can claim she's mentally ill, suicidal, not credible. We have to see her. We have to make sure she's alive. She's in the ICU. Adrian's people are watching her 24/7. You go near that hospital, you're dead. Then what do we do? Cole's jaw tightened. We move faster. We take what we have and we go public, before he can finish what he started. Patricia convened an emergency meeting at a law firm across town. Neutral territory, swept for bugs, with security at every entrance. Evelyn, Cole, Marcus, and the forensic accountant, a quiet man named David Chen, sat around a conference table covered in documents. Here's what we have, David said, pulling up a presentation on the screen. Adrian Voss controls at least 17 shell companies across 6 countries. Over the past 10 years, approximately $200 million has moved through these entities. The money originates from sources linked to organized crime, drug trafficking, arms dealing, human trafficking. Adrian's job is to make it clean. Evelyn felt sick. 200 million? That's just what we can trace, David continued. There's likely more. And the people he's working with, they're not local criminals. These are international syndicates with government connections, military resources, and zero tolerance for exposure. What about the women? Evelyn asked. Sarah, Rebecca, Lillian, where do they fit? David pulled up another file. Leverage, control. Adrian marries women who are vulnerable, isolated, easy to manipulate. He uses them to appear legitimate, a stable family man, a respectable businessman. But if they become liabilities, he disposes of them. Disposes, Evelyn repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. Like garbage. We need to be strategic, Patricia interjected. We have financial evidence, witness testimony from Sarah, and circumstantial evidence about the other women. But to make charges stick, we need direct proof of criminal activity, something that ties Adrian personally to a specific crime. What about Viktor Sokolov? Marcus spoke up. The business partner who disappeared. If we can prove Adrian ordered his murder, we'd need a body, a witness, or a recording, Cole said, and we have none of those. The room fell silent. Evelyn stared at the documents, her mind racing. They had so much evidence, but it was all fragmented, circumstantial, enough to raise questions, but not enough to guarantee convictions. And in the meantime, Lillian was in a hospital bed, possibly dying. Sarah was in hiding, and Adrian was still untouchable. There's one more option, Cole said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I still have contacts in Adrian's organization. People who are tired of his control, who want out but are too afraid to move. If I can convince one of them to flip, to testify. That's suicide, Marcus said. Adrian kills informants. He kills caught informants, Cole corrected. If we protect them, if we move fast enough, we might get what we need. Patricia shook her head. This is beyond risky. This is necessary. Evelyn's voice cut through the room. We're running out of time. Lillian might not survive another week. And if Adrian figures out we have this evidence, he'll burn everything and everyone connected to it. We take the risk or we lose. Patricia looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. All right, but we do this carefully. We document everything. We build a case so airtight that even Adrian's lawyers can't dismantle it. Agreed, Cole said. I'll reach out to my contact tonight. That night, back at the safe house, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Lillian, alone in a hospital bed, possibly fighting for her life. She thought about Sarah, hiding in the shadows, about Rebecca, whose body had never been found, and she thought about herself, the woman she'd been 8 years ago, so desperate for love and stability that she'd ignored every red flag. She wasn't that woman anymore. Her phone, a burner Cole had given her, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Sarah. I heard about Lillian. Is she alive? Evelyn hesitated, then replied, For now, we're moving against Adrian. Soon. The response came quickly. Be careful. He's cornered, and cornered animals are the most dangerous. Evelyn stared at the message, then typed back. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Sarah's reply was immediate. You should be, yes. Oh. The next morning, Cole returned with news. His contact, a man named Dimitri who handled logistics for Adrian's operations, had agreed to meet, but only under specific conditions. Neutral location, no recording devices, and a guarantee of witness protection before he said a word. He's scared, Cole said. But he's ready to talk. He knows where the bodies are buried. Literally. Patricia arranged for federal protection, and 2 days later they met Dmitri in a hotel conference room. He was a thin man in his 50s, with haunted eyes and hands that shook when he lit a cigarette. "I've worked for Voss for 12 years, Dmitri said, his accent thick. "I've seen things, done things. But Viktor Sokolov, that was different. That was personal." "Tell us what happened," Patricia said gently. Dmitri exhaled smoke, his eyes distant. Viktor was skimming. Not much, but enough. Adrian found out. He gave Viktor a chance to fix it, to pay it back, but Viktor got greedy, started threatening to go to the authorities, to expose the whole operation. So Adrian made a decision. "What decision?" Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "He ordered the hit. I was there when he made the call. He told his enforcer, a man named Reese, to make it look like an accident. Hiking trip gone wrong. And a week later they found Viktor's body in a ravine." "Can you testify to this?" Patricia asked. Dmitri nodded slowly. "If you protect me. If you get me out of the country. Because if Adrian finds out I talked, I'm dead." "We'll protect you," Patricia said firmly. Dmitri's testimony was the break they needed. Combined with the financial records, Sarah's account, and the pattern of disappearances, they finally had enough to move forward. Patricia contacted the FBI. Within 48 hours, agents were involved, reviewing the evidence, interviewing witnesses. And within a week, warrants were issued. For Adrian Voss, for his associates, for the entire network. But on the morning the arrests were supposed to happen, Evelyn received a call that made her blood run cold. It was Cole, and his voice was tight with controlled panic. "Adrian knows. He's running, and he's not running alone." "What do you mean?" "Lillian's gone. She checked herself out of the hospital 2 hours ago. Security footage shows Adrian picking her up. They're together." Evelyn's mind raced. "Why would she go with him?" "I don't know. But we need to find them before he disappears, or before he does something desperate." The FBI mobilized, tracking Adrian's movements through credit card transactions, license plate readers, cell phone pings. And 12 hours later, they located him. A private airfield 2 hours outside the city. A chartered plane, fueled and ready for departure. And standing on the tarmac, her hand in Adrian's, was Lillian. But as law enforcement closed in, as agents surrounded the airfield and ordered Adrian to surrender, Evelyn saw something in Lillian's face that changed everything. She wasn't a hostage, she was defiant. And when the agents moved in, Lillian turned to Adrian and said something that the surveillance microphones picked up clearly. "I told you we should have left yesterday." Evelyn's world tilted. Lillian hadn't been a victim trying to escape. She'd been Adrian's partner all along. Evelyn watched the scene unfold on the monitor in the FBI mobile command center, her entire body numb. The airfield was surrounded, agents in tactical gear closing in from every angle, their weapons drawn. But all she could see was Lillian standing beside Adrian, her chin lifted in defiance, her hand still clasped in his. "I don't understand," Evelyn whispered. "She came to me. She told me she was trapped. She gave me information." Cole stood beside her, his expression grim. "She gave you exactly what Adrian wanted you to have." "What?" "Think about it." Cole's voice was low, urgent. "Every piece of information Lillian fed you, every meeting, every revelation, it was all designed to make you trust her, to make you believe she was a victim just like you." Evelyn's mind raced back through every conversation, every moment. The cafe where Lillian had looked so broken, the texts warning her that Adrian knew, the terror in her voice when she talked about being trapped. It had all been performance. "The overdose," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "The hospital." "Staged," Cole said. "A way to make her look vulnerable, unstable, harmless. While you were focused on saving her, she and Adrian were planning their exit." Special Agent Morrison, the lead investigator, turned away from the communications equipment. "We're moving in. Voss and Cross are being taken into custody now." Through the monitor, Evelyn watched as agents surrounded the couple on the tarmac. Adrian's hands went up slowly, his expression calm, almost bored. Like this was a minor inconvenience rather than the end of his empire. But it was Lillian who made Evelyn's blood run cold. She was smiling. Not a nervous smile, not a frightened smile. a knowing, victorious smile that said she'd already won something no one else could see. The interrogations lasted for hours. Adrian invoked his right to an attorney immediately and said nothing. But Lillian was different. She waived her rights, asked for no lawyer, and sat across from Special Agent Morrison with the same serene expression she'd worn on the tarmac. Evelyn watched through the one-way glass, Cole beside her. "You understand the charges against you, Ms. Cross?" Morrison asked. "Mrs. Voss," Lillian corrected smoothly. "And yes, I understand. Conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice. Quite a list." "You don't seem concerned." Lillian's smile widened. "Should I be? You have financial records that could belong to anyone. You have testimony from a woman who's been hiding for years and a man who worked for my husband and has every reason to lie. What you don't have is proof that I knew about any of it." Morrison leaned forward. "We have your meeting with Evelyn Carter. We have recordings of your conversations." "Do you?" Lillian's eyebrow arched. "Because I remember meeting with a woman who was clearly unstable after her divorce. A woman who was looking for someone to blame for her failed marriage. I tried to be kind. I tried to help her understand that sometimes relationships just don't work out. If she misconstrued my words, that's hardly my fault." Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. "She's lying. Everything she told me can't be proven," Cole said quietly. She was careful. "No electronic trail, no recordings, nothing concrete. It's her word against yours." "What about the flash drive, the financial records?" "They implicate Adrian, maybe his associates, but there's nothing directly tying Lillian to the operation. Legally, she's just a wife who might or might not have known what her husband was doing." Evelyn felt her carefully constructed case crumbling. "So she walks away? After everything?" "Not necessarily." Cole's jaw tightened. "But it's going to be harder than we thought." In the interrogation room, Morrison was pressing. "What about Victor Sokolov?" "Who?" Lillian's expression was blank, innocent. "The man who disappeared. The man whose murder your husband ordered." "I don't know anything about that. Adrian doesn't discuss his business with me. I'm his wife, not his partner." "Then explain the offshore accounts in your name. Wedding gifts from Adrian's associates. I assumed they were legitimate investments. Was I supposed to interrogate every generous gesture?" Lillian's voice took on a wounded edge. "I was a foster kid who got lucky enough to marry a successful man. I trusted him. If he was involved in something illegal, I had no idea." Morrison's frustration was visible. "You expect us to believe you're completely innocent? I expect you to prove I'm not." Lillian leaned back in her chair, utterly composed. "And I don't think you can." The interrogation ended 2 hours later with Lillian released on bail. Adrian remained in custody, but his lawyers were already filing motions, challenging evidence, building his defense. And Evelyn watched from the command center as Lillian walked out of the FBI building into the evening air, a free woman. "This isn't over," Morrison said, approaching Evelyn. "We're building the case. We'll find something." "Will you?" Evelyn's voice was hollow. "She's been 3 steps ahead of us this entire time." Morrison didn't have an answer for that. That night, back at the safe house, Evelyn sat in the darkness, trying to process what had happened. She'd been so certain, so sure that she was fighting for justice, for truth, for all the women Adrian had destroyed. But Lillian wasn't destroyed. Lillian was thriving. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You played your part beautifully. Thank you for the evidence. It was exactly what we needed to negotiate our immunity deal. L." Evelyn's hands trembled as she read the message again. And again. "What immunity deal?" The response came immediately. "Adrian and I made a deal with the FBI. We give them the syndicate, names, locations, operations, and we walk away. New identities, witness protection, a chance to start over. You helped us get the leverage we needed. So really, Evelyn, this is all thanks to you." The phone slipped from Evelyn's fingers. She'd been used, completely, thoroughly used. Every piece of evidence she'd gathered, every witness she'd found, every move she'd made. It had all been part of Adrian and Lillian's plan. They'd manipulated her into building the case that would give them their freedom. Cole found her an hour later, still sitting in the darkness, staring at nothing. "I heard about the immunity deal," he said quietly. "They played me." Evelyn's voice was dead. "From the beginning. The divorce, the replacement, Even Lillian's confession. It was all designed to make me angry enough to fight back, to gather evidence they could use as bargaining chips. We don't know that for sure. Yes, we do. Evelyn turned to look at him, and her eyes were hollow. Adrian Voss doesn't do anything without a plan. He knew I'd never just accept the divorce and move on. He knew I'd dig, he knew I'd find Sarah, find the evidence, go to the authorities. He counted on it. And Lillian, she made sure I had all the right pieces. Cole sat down beside her. Then we make sure the deal falls apart. How? We find something they can't trade away, something that implicates them so deeply that no immunity deal will cover it. Like what? Cole was quiet for a long moment. Sarah said Rebecca's body was never found. What if we find it? What if we can prove direct involvement? Evelyn's pulse quickened. How would we even start? I have an idea. Cole pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. Dimitri mentioned a property Adrian owned in the mountains, a cabin he used for private business meetings. If Adrian was going to dispose of a body, that's where he'd do it. The FBI will have already searched it. Not if they don't know it exists. Cole met her eyes. It's not in Adrian's name, it's registered to one of his shell companies, one that's not on the FBI's radar yet. How do you know about it? Because I helped him buy it. They left before dawn, driving into the mountains in Cole's SUV. The cabin was 3 hours outside the city, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through dense forest. The trees here were tall and ancient, blocking out the sun, making the world feel smaller, darker. How many times have you been here? Evelyn asked as they drove. Twice. Cole's voice was tight. Both times I was ordered not to ask questions about what happened inside. But you knew. I knew enough. The cabin appeared suddenly, a small structure of weathered wood and stone that looked almost abandoned. But the lock on the door was new, and when Cole examined it, his expression darkened. Someone's been here recently. He picked the lock with practiced efficiency, and they stepped inside. The interior was sparse, a table, a few chairs, a fireplace that hadn't been used in months. But it was clean, too clean, like someone had scrubbed away evidence. Where would he hide a body? Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole moved through the cabin, checking floors, walls, looking for inconsistencies. And then he stopped at the fireplace. Here! He knelt down, examining the stone hearth. One of the stones was slightly different from the others, newer, cleaner. Cole pulled out a knife and worked it into the gaps, prying the stone loose. Behind it was a small compartment, and inside the compartment was a metal box. Evelyn's breath caught as Cole pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, women, all around the same age, all with similar features. Some of the photographs were posed, professional. Others were surveillance shots taken without the subject's knowledge. And at the bottom of the box was a small cloth bundle. Cole unwrapped it carefully, and Evelyn's stomach turned. It was a necklace, delicate, silver, with a small pendant in the shape of a bird. Rebecca wore this, Cole said quietly. I remember seeing it in the photographs the police circulated when she disappeared. So she was here. She was here. Cole's voice was grim. And I'd bet my life her body is somewhere on this property. They searched for hours, combing through the forest around the cabin, looking for disturbed ground, unusual patterns, anything that might indicate a burial site. And finally, behind the cabin, near a cluster of pine trees, Evelyn found it. The ground was slightly sunken, the vegetation newer than the surrounding area, as if something had been buried there and the earth had settled over time. Cole, she called, her voice shaking. He came immediately, took one look at the site, and pulled out his phone. We need to call the FBI. We can't disturb this ourselves. What if they can't prove it's connected to Adrian? They will. Cole's voice was certain, because I'm going to testify that he owned this property, that I was ordered to bring women here, that I saw things that made me sick enough to quit, and with Rebecca's necklace in that box, with this burial site, they'll have enough. None. The FBI arrived within 2 hours, bringing cadaver dogs, forensic teams, and Special Agent Morrison. The dogs alerted immediately to the burial site, and by sunset they'd begun excavation. Evelyn stood at a distance, watching the careful, methodical work, watching as they uncovered what might be the final proof she needed. Morrison approached her as the sun dipped below the mountains, casting long shadows across the clearing. If this is Rebecca Tate, Morrison said, and if we can tie it to Adrian Voss, the immunity deal's void, both his and Lillian's. What about everything they've given you? The syndicate, the names, the operations? We'll have to build those cases the hard way, but we don't make deals with murderers. Morrison's expression was hard. Not if we can prove it. 2 hours later, as floodlights illuminated the excavation site, they found her. Human remains, wrapped in plastic, buried in a shallow grave. The forensic team would need time to confirm identity, to determine cause of death, to build the full picture. But Rebecca's necklace matched. The location matched. The timeline matched. And when they searched the cabin more thoroughly, they found something else. A journal. Hidden beneath a floorboard, written in Rebecca's handwriting, documenting her relationship with Adrian, her growing fear, her realization that she was in danger. And on the last page, dated the day before she disappeared, a single sentence. If something happens to me, Adrian Voss is responsible. The arrest came swiftly. Adrian was charged with first-degree murder. Lillian was charged as an accessory, based on evidence that she'd helped clean the cabin, helped dispose of evidence, helped maintain the cover-up. The immunity deal was shredded, and this time, when Lillian was brought into the interrogation room, her composure cracked. "I didn't know about Rebecca," she said, her voice rising. "I didn't know he'd killed anyone. He told me she'd just left, that she'd gotten cold feet and disappeared. I had no idea." "You helped clean the cabin," Morrison said flatly. "Your DNA is all over it." "Because I went there with him, because he asked me to help tidy up before he sold the property. I thought I was just cleaning a vacation home." Then explain the photographs, the box, the necklace. Lillian's face paled. "I never saw any of that. He must have hidden it. He must have—" She stopped, her carefully constructed persona finally shattering. "You have to understand, I didn't have a choice. Adrian controls everything, my identity, my money, my entire life. If I didn't do what he said, you'd end up like Rebecca?" Morrison's voice was cold. "Like Sarah? Like all the other women he used and discarded?" Lillian's eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time, not the calculated performances Evelyn had seen before. "I thought I could control him. I thought if I became exactly what he wanted, if I played the role perfectly, I'd be safe. But you're never safe with a man like Adrian. You're just useful until you're not." "Then help us," Morrison said. "Tell us everything. Every crime, every associate, every detail. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see a courtroom instead of a grave." Lillian looked at her hands, at the expensive rings on her fingers, at all the trappings of the life she'd built. And then she started talking. Over the next 3 days, Lillian gave the FBI everything: names, dates, locations, operations. She detailed the money laundering schemes, the offshore accounts, the network of associates spanning 3 continents. She confirmed Dmitri's testimony about Viktor Sokolov's murder. She provided evidence about bribes paid to officials, about shipments of illegal goods, about threats and violence and disappearances. And she told them about the other women, not just Sarah and Rebecca, but others, women. Adrian had used as cover, as leverage, as collateral. Some had been paid off and disappeared voluntarily. Others had been threatened into silence, and at least 2 more, Lillian believed, had been killed. "He kept trophies," Lillian said, her voice hollow. "Small things. A piece of jewelry, a photograph, something personal. He said it reminded him of his victories, of the women who'd tried to challenge him and lost." Morrison recorded every word. And when the interrogation finally ended, when Lillian was led back to her cell, Evelyn was waiting in the hallway. Their eyes met. "I'm sorry," Lillian said quietly, "for using you, for lying to you, for making you think we were the same." "We were never the same," Evelyn said, "because when I had the choice between becoming like him or walking away, I chose to walk away." Lillian's smile was bitter. "I chose survival, and look where it got me." "You chose power," Evelyn corrected. "You chose to be his partner instead of his victim, and now you're paying for it." Lillian looked away. "At least I'm alive. That's more than Rebecca can say." "Being alive isn't the same as living," Evelyn said. "I learned that the hard way." She turned and walked away, leaving Lillian standing in the hallway, surrounded by guards, trapped in the prison she'd helped build. The trial lasted 3 months. Adrian maintained his innocence, his lawyers arguing that the evidence was circumstantial, that Lillian was an unreliable witness, that the prosecution's case was built on the testimony of criminals and liars. But the jury saw through it. They saw Rebecca's journal. They saw the burial site. They saw the pattern of disappearances and violence. They heard Dimitri's testimony, Sarah's testimony, Lillian's testimony. They heard Cole explain how he'd worked for Adrian, how he'd seen the cruelty firsthand. And they heard Evelyn. She took the stand on the final day of testimony, wearing a simple black dress, her voice steady and clear. Adrian Voss is a man who sees people as tools, she said, as assets to be acquired, managed, and disposed of when they're no longer useful. He married me not because he loved me, but because I served a purpose. I made him look stable, respectable, normal, and when I stopped serving that purpose, he replaced me. Just like he replaced every woman before me. Just like he would have replaced every woman after. She looked directly at Adrian as she spoke, and for the first time in 8 years, she saw real emotion in his eyes. Fear. But the thing about tools, Evelyn continued, is that they can break. They can refuse to work. They can turn against the hand that wields them. And that's what happened here. All the women he tried to use, tried to control, tried to destroy. We broke free. We refused to stay silent. We turned against him. And now, finally, he's the one who's powerless. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Adrian was convicted on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, money laundering, racketeering. The sentence was life without parole. Lillian took a plea deal. 20 years in exchange for her testimony, with the possibility of parole after 50. And when it was all over, when the verdicts had been read, and the defendants led away, Evelyn walked out of the courthouse into the bright Colorado sunshine. Sarah was waiting for her on the steps. "It's over," Sarah said quietly. "It's over," Evelyn agreed. They stood together for a moment, two women who'd survived the same monster, who'd fought their way out of the same darkness. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. Evelyn looked out at the city, at the mountains beyond, at the vast expanse of possibility stretching before her. "I'm going to live," she said. "Really live. Not just survive, not just exist, but actually live." Sarah smiled. "That sounds like a good plan. What about you?" "I'm going home." Sarah's eyes were distant. "To Detroit. To find the family I left behind. To rebuild the life I lost. To remember who I was before Adrian Voss tried to erase me." They embraced briefly, and then Sarah walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Evelyn stood alone on the courthouse steps, feeling the sun on her face, the wind in her hair. For 8 years, she'd been a ghost, a shadow of who she could have been, living in the margins of Adrian's world. But not anymore. She pulled out her phone and called Patricia. "It's done," Evelyn said. "The trial's over. He's going to prison." "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. Evelyn thought about the question. How did she feel? Not triumphant, not vindicated, not even relieved, just free. "I feel like I can breathe again," she said finally, "like the weight I've been carrying for so long is finally gone." "So what's next?" Evelyn smiled. "Everything." 6 months after the trial, Evelyn stood in the doorway of a small community center in Denver, watching a group of women seated in a circle. Some looked nervous, their eyes darting to the exits as if they might bolt at any moment. Others sat with their arms crossed, defensive walls built so high that nothing could penetrate, and a few stared at nothing, their expressions hollow, like they'd learned long ago that hope was a luxury they couldn't afford. Evelyn recognized every face in that circle, not individually, but collectively. She'd worn those same expressions. She'd felt that same fear, that same exhaustion, that same desperate need to believe that life could be different. "Thank you all for coming," Evelyn said, stepping into the room. "I know it's not easy to be here. I know some of you are scared, some of you are angry, some of you are just tired of fighting, but you're here, and that's the hardest part." She moved to the empty chair in the circle and sat down. No podium, no stage, no distance between her and these women who'd survived what she'd survived. "My name is Evelyn Carter," she began, And 8 years ago, I married a man who almost destroyed me. Not with his fists, though there are many kinds of violence, but with his control, his manipulation, his systematic erasure of who I was until I couldn't remember the woman I'd been before him. The room was silent, every woman's attention fixed on her. For a long time, I thought it was my fault, Evelyn continued. I thought if I'd been better, smarter, more of what he needed, he wouldn't have left, wouldn't have replaced me, wouldn't have made me feel like I was nothing, but I was wrong. Because the problem was never me. It was him. And it took me almost losing everything to understand that. A young woman in the back, maybe 25, with haunted eyes and bruises barely hidden by makeup, spoke up. How did you get away? I stopped waiting for permission, Evelyn said. I stopped waiting for him to change or to see me or to validate my existence. I chose myself. Even when it was terrifying, even when I had no idea what came next, I chose to walk away from a life that was killing me slowly and build something real. But what if there's nowhere to go? Another woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if you have nothing? No money, no family, no skills that matter in the real world? Evelyn leaned forward. Then you start with what you have, even if it's just yourself. Even if it's just the decision to survive one more day, you start there and you build. She'd spent the past 6 months building this, a foundation technically, but really it was a lifeline. The Rebecca Tate Foundation, named for the woman who hadn't survived, funded by the settlement money Evelyn had received from Adrian's seized assets. Money that had been made through blood and exploitation, now channeled toward helping women escape the same kinds of men who'd created it. The foundation provided emergency housing, legal assistance, job training, therapy, everything Evelyn wished she'd had when she first started questioning whether her marriage was what it should be. Everything Sarah and Rebecca and countless others had needed but never received. I can't promise it'll be easy, Evelyn said to the women in the circle. Leaving is hard. Rebuilding is harder. Some days you'll want to go back because at least you knew what to expect there, even if it was hurting you. But I can promise you this, you're stronger than you think, and you don't have to do this alone. After the meeting, as women filed out slowly, some stopping to pick up resource packets or schedule follow-up appointments, a woman in her 40s approached Evelyn. She was well-dressed, composed, the kind of woman who looked like she had everything together. I'm not like them, the woman said, gesturing vaguely at the departing group. My husband doesn't hit me. He's successful, respected. Everyone thinks we have the perfect marriage. But you're here, Evelyn said gently. The woman's composure cracked slightly. He makes me feel crazy, like I'm imagining things, like I'm never enough, and I needed to hear someone say that I'm not losing my mind. You're not. Evelyn's voice was firm. And you're not alone. Abuse doesn't always leave bruises you can see. Sometimes it's just the slow erosion of who you are until you can't remember what you looked like before. The woman's eyes filled with tears. How do you start over when everyone thinks you're throwing away a good thing? You stop living for everyone else's perception, Evelyn said. You start living for the truth. And the truth is, a good thing doesn't make you feel like you're disappearing. The woman nodded, taking one of the resource packets with trembling hands. Thank you. Come back next week, Evelyn said. Or call any time, day or night. We're here. As the woman left, Patricia appeared in the doorway. She'd been instrumental in setting up the foundation, handling the legal complexities, navigating the bureaucracy. And she'd become something Evelyn hadn't expected. A friend. Good turnout today, Patricia said, surveying the now empty room. 12 women, Evelyn replied. 12 women who chose to show up instead of stay silent. That's something. It's more than something, it's everything. Patricia handed her a file. Speaking of which, we received another grant approval. The state is funding an expansion, 3 more safe houses, 2 more counselors, and a legal aid program. Evelyn flipped through the documents, her heart swelling. That's incredible. You're changing lives, Evelyn. Real, tangible change. We're changing lives, Evelyn corrected. I couldn't do this without you, without Marcus, without Cole, without everyone who believed this mattered. Patricia smiled. So what's next? You've built the foundation. You've helped dozens of women already. You've turned your pain into purpose. What does Evelyn Carter do for an encore? Evelyn looked around the community center, at the chairs arranged in a circle. at the resource materials stacked neatly on tables, at the safe space she'd created from the ruins of her old life. "I keep going," she said simply, "because there are still women out there who think they're alone, who think they're crazy, who think they deserve the treatment they're getting. And as long as they exist, this work exists." That evening, Evelyn returned to her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the sprawling estate she'd shared with Adrian. But it was hers. Every piece of furniture, every photograph on the wall, every book on the shelf, all chosen by her, reflecting her taste, her history, her truth. She made herself dinner, something simple, and ate it while watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. No waiting for someone to come home. No wondering if she'd done something wrong. No walking on eggshells in her own space. Just peace. Her phone rang. An unknown number. For a moment, her old instincts flared. The paranoia that Adrian had instilled, the fear that danger was always one phone call away. But she'd learned to distinguish between caution and letting fear control her life. She answered. "Evelyn Carter?" A woman's voice, uncertain. "Speaking. My name is Jennifer Hayes. I got your number from the Foundation website. I hope it's okay that I'm calling." "Of course." Evelyn set down her fork, giving the call her full attention. "What can I do for you?" "I don't even know where to start," Jennifer's voice cracked. "My husband, he's not violent, but he controls everything. The money, the house, who I can see, what I can do. And lately he's been talking about starting fresh, about how I need to be better, and I saw the news about your ex-husband, about what he did, and I'm terrified mine is heading down the same path." Evelyn's chest tightened. "Jennifer, the fact that you're calling means you already know something's wrong. Trust that instinct." "But what if I'm overreacting? What if I'm throwing away a marriage over nothing?" "It's not nothing if it makes you afraid. It's not nothing if you're calling a stranger because you can't talk to anyone else." Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "When can you come to the center? We have counselors who can help you assess your situation safely." "I don't know. He tracks my location. He monitors my spending. If he finds out I'm seeking help, we have protocols for that. We can meet you somewhere neutral, somewhere he won't think to look. We can help you plan, whether that's staying and setting boundaries or leaving safely." Evelyn paused. "You don't have to decide everything tonight. You just have to take the first step." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, I'll come. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Text this number with a time that works for you. We'll make it happen." After they hung up, Evelyn sat in the fading light, thinking about Jennifer, about all the Jennifers out there who were one phone call away from changing their lives, or one day away from becoming another statistic. The work was never done, but that was okay, because neither was she. 2 weeks later, Evelyn received a visitor she hadn't expected. Cole showed up at the Foundation's main office, looking uncomfortable in the civilian setting. He'd spent the past 6 months testifying in related cases, helping the FBI dismantle what remained of Adrian's network. But the work was taking its toll. Evelyn could see it in the lines around his eyes, the weight he carried in his shoulders. "I'm leaving," he said without preamble, "taking a job overseas. Security consulting for a nonprofit that works in conflict zones." Evelyn felt a pang of something. Not quite loss, but the recognition that someone who'd been essential to her survival was moving on. "When?" "End of the month." "That's fast," Cole shrugged. "I've stayed in one place too long already, and I've done what I came here to do. Adrian's locked up. The network's dismantled. You're safe." "So you're running away?" His eyes sharpened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Evelyn crossed her arms. "You spent years working for Adrian, doing things you regret, and instead of dealing with that, instead of building something positive here where it could actually matter, you're running to another war zone where you can pretend you're one of the good guys." Cole's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? I spent 8 years running from the truth about my marriage. I know what avoidance looks like." Evelyn's voice softened. "You helped save my life, Cole. You put yourself at risk to do the right thing, but you can't outrun guilt. Trust me, I tried. So what do you suggest? I stay here and do what? Talk about my feelings in a support group? I suggest you stop punishing yourself and start forgiving yourself, the way you helped me learn to forgive myself for staying as long as I did." Evelyn met his eyes. You're not the man you were when you worked for Adrian. You proved that. Now you need to believe it. Cole looked away, his throat working. It's not that simple. It never is. But it's necessary. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared trauma and hard-won survival hanging between them. The job offer, Cole said finally. It's not just running. It's using the skills I have to protect people who need it. Isn't that redemption? Redemption isn't something you earn in a war zone, Evelyn said gently. It's something you build in the quiet moments, in the choice to stay when it's easier to leave, in the decision to help one more person, even when you're tired, even when it hurts. Cole smiled slightly. When did you become so wise? When I stopped letting other people define my worth. Evelyn extended her hand. But if you need to go, I understand. Just promise me you'll come back. When you're ready. He took her hand, his grip firm. I promise. A week later, he was gone. But Evelyn knew he'd be back. People who'd survived what they'd survived. They had a way of finding each other again. 3 months after Cole left, Evelyn received a letter from the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility. Lillian wanted to see her. Evelyn stared at the request for a long time, debating whether to respond. Part of her wanted nothing to do with the woman who'd manipulated her, used her, helped Adrian build his empire of abuse and control. But another part, the part that had learned forgiveness was more for the forgiver than the forgiven, was curious. She scheduled the visit. The correctional facility was stark, institutional, all concrete and fluorescent lights. Evelyn sat in the visiting room, surrounded by other families and friends, waiting. And then Lillian appeared. She looked different. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by prison-issue scrubs. Her hair was pulled back simply, no salon styling, and her face, the carefully constructed mask of perfection, was gone. What remained was just a woman, tired, scared, and very human. They sat across from each other, a scratched plexiglass barrier between them. Thank you for coming, Lillian said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, Evelyn admitted. Why did you want to see me? Lillian's hands twisted in her lap. To apologize. I know it doesn't change anything. I know you have every reason to hate me, but I needed to say it anyway. I'm sorry for using you, for lying to you, for being part of the machine that almost destroyed you. Evelyn studied her carefully. Do you mean that? Or is this another performance? I don't know anymore. Lillian's smile was bitter. I've been performing for so long, I'm not sure I know how to be genuine, but I'm trying. That has to count for something. Why did you do it? Evelyn asked. You weren't trapped the way I was. You knew what Adrian was. You chose to be his partner. I chose survival, Lillian said. When you grow up with nothing, when you spend your whole life being invisible, and someone offers you a chance to be seen, to matter, to have power, you take it, even if the price is your soul. That's not an excuse. It's not meant to be. It's just the truth. Lillian leaned forward. I thought if I became exactly what Adrian wanted, I'd be safe. I thought if I played the game better than anyone else, I'd win. But the thing about men like Adrian is that nobody wins. You either escape or you get destroyed. There's no third option. You help destroy other women, Evelyn said, her voice hard. Rebecca, Sarah, how many others? Lillian's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to reconcile that. But Evelyn, I need you to understand something. When you're in that world, when you're deep in it, you stop seeing people as people. They become obstacles or tools. It's how you survive. It's how you justify the things you do. That's what Adrian said, in court, that he was just doing business. And he meant it. To him, we really were just pieces on a board. Lillian wiped her eyes. But I'm not him, and somewhere along the way I forgot that. I forgot I used to be a person with empathy, with conscience, with lines I wouldn't cross. I became the monster because I thought it was the only way to survive the monster. Evelyn sat back, processing. Why tell me this now? Because you're the only person who might understand. You knew Adrian. You know what it's like to lose yourself in someone else's darkness. But you found your way out. You became something better. And I need to know that's possible for me too, even from here, even after everything I've done. Is it? Evelyn asked. Possible? I don't know, but I have 15 years to figure it out. Lillian's voice was steady now. I'm working with a counselor, trying to understand how I became who I became. And I've been thinking about the other women, the ones I helped hurt. I want to find a way to make amends. How? I'm writing everything down. Every woman Adrian targeted, every associate who helped him, every crime I witnessed. The FBI has most of it, but there are details, names, dates, places that only I know. I'm compiling it all, and when I'm done, I'm giving it to your foundation. Evelyn's breath caught. Why? Because you're using your pain to help others, and maybe if I give you the tools to help more people, to stop more men like Adrian, it won't erase what I've done. But it might mean something. Lillian's eyes were pleading. Please, let me help. It's the only way I know how to start becoming human again. Evelyn looked at this woman who'd been her enemy, her manipulator, her dark mirror, and she saw something she recognized, the desperate need for redemption, for proof that change was possible. All right, Evelyn said finally, give me what you have, and I'll make sure it's used to protect people, to stop the next Adrian Voss before he can build his empire. Lillian's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me, Evelyn said, standing. Just do the work. Real change doesn't happen in one conversation. It happens in the daily choice to be better than you were yesterday. As Evelyn walked out of the correctional facility into the bright afternoon sun, she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something like understanding. Lillian had made terrible choices, but she'd also been shaped by systems and circumstances that made those choices seem inevitable. The work of justice wasn't just punishing the guilty. It was understanding how guilt happened and preventing it from happening again. So, a year after Adrian's conviction, Evelyn received a call from Special Agent Morrison. There's someone who wants to meet you, Morrison said. She asked specifically for you. Who? A woman named Natasha Raines. Does that name sound familiar? Evelyn's pulse quickened. Natasha, the young lawyer Adrian had been grooming, the woman in the photograph Lillian had shown her. Where is she? Safe house in Boulder. She's been cooperating with us, providing information about Adrian's remaining associates. But she's struggling. She asked if you'd be willing to talk to her. I'll be there tomorrow. The safe house was nondescript, anonymous. Natasha was waiting in the living room, looking younger than her 26 years, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes red from crying. Thank you for coming, Natasha said, her voice shaking. I didn't know if you would. After everything, Evelyn sat down across from her. Morrison said you wanted to talk. I needed to apologize. I didn't know about you, about Lillian, about any of it. Adrian told me his marriage had been over for years, that you'd parted amicably, that he was mentoring me because he saw potential. I had no idea that he was grooming you to be his next wife. Evelyn's voice was gentle despite the harsh words. That he was following a pattern he'd perfected over years? Natasha nodded miserably. When everything came out, when I realized what he'd been planning, I felt so stupid, so used. I'm a lawyer. I should have seen the signs. Intelligence doesn't protect you from manipulation, Evelyn said. Neither does education or success or strength. Adrian was a predator who knew exactly how to identify and exploit vulnerability. None of that was your fault. But I should have known. I should have questioned why a man like him was so interested in me. You trusted someone who presented himself as trustworthy. That's not weakness. That's being human. Evelyn leaned forward. Natasha, listen to me. What happened to you? What almost happened to you? It's not because you were stupid or weak. It's because Adrian Voss spent years perfecting his technique. You were targeted by an expert. How do you move past it? Natasha's voice broke. How do you trust anyone again? Slowly, carefully, with help. Evelyn pulled out a card. This is the foundation I run. We have counselors who specialize in this exact kind of trauma. We can help you process what happened and rebuild your sense of safety. Natasha took the card with trembling hands. Do you ever stop feeling angry? No, Evelyn said honestly. But you learn to channel it, to use it as fuel instead of letting it consume you. I'm angry every single day. Angry at Adrian, angry at the system that enabled him, angry at how long it took for anyone to stop him. But I use that anger to make sure fewer women end up where we did. I want to help, Natasha said suddenly. With the foundation, with other women, with anything. I need to turn this into something that matters. Evelyn smiled. We can always use volunteers, especially lawyers. Over the next months, Natasha became a regular presence at the foundation, working with their legal aid program, helping women navigate restraining orders and divorce proceedings. And slowly, piece by piece, she rebuilt herself. Just like Evelyn had, just like Sarah had, just like all of them had. 2 years after Adrian's conviction, Evelyn stood in front of a full auditorium at the University of Colorado. She'd been invited to speak about her experience, about the foundation, about the work of helping survivors rebuild their lives. The room was packed with students, activists, survivors, and supporters. And sitting in the front row, Evelyn saw familiar faces. Patricia, Marcus, Natasha, Sarah, who'd flown in from Detroit specifically for this, and even Cole, who'd returned from his overseas work to attend. Power, Evelyn began, her voice strong and clear, is not inherently good or evil. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used to build or to destroy. Adrian Voss used his power to destroy. He built an empire on the backs of women he manipulated, controlled, and discarded. He used wealth, influence, and fear to maintain control. And for a long time, it worked. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But power has a weakness. It requires compliance. It requires people to believe in the illusion, to accept the narrative, to stay silent. And the moment people start speaking up, start refusing to comply, start choosing truth over comfort, that's when power begins to crumble. A hand went up in the audience. A young woman, maybe 19. How do you know when to leave? She asked. How do you know it's not just a rough patch, that you're not giving up too easily? Evelyn smiled sadly. You know because you're asking the question. Because healthy relationships don't make you wonder if you should escape them. They don't make you feel like you're walking on eggshells or losing yourself. If you're questioning whether you should leave, the answer is probably yes. Another hand, an older man this time. What about forgiveness? Do you forgive Adrian Voss for what he did? Evelyn considered the question carefully. Forgiveness is complicated. I've forgiven myself for staying as long as I did, for not seeing the signs sooner, for believing his version of reality over my own instincts. But Adrian? I don't know if I'll ever forgive him, and I don't think I need to. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Understanding is, acceptance is, moving forward is. But forgiveness, that's optional. The questions continued for another hour, and when it was over, when the applause had faded and the crowd had dispersed, Evelyn's small group gathered outside. You were incredible up there, Sarah said, embracing her. We all were, Evelyn corrected. Every woman who spoke up, who testified, who refused to stay silent, we did this together. Cole approached, looking more settled than he had in years. The overseas work was good, necessary, but you were right. I needed to come home, deal with things instead of running from them. So you're staying? For a while? I thought I might volunteer with the foundation, if you'll have me. Evelyn grinned. We can always use good security. Marcus stepped forward, looking proud. I've been documenting everything, the investigation, the trial, the aftermath. I think there's a book here. Maybe even a documentary. Your story, all of your stories, they need to be told. Not my story, Evelyn said, our story. And yes, it needs to be told. So that the next woman who finds herself in a marriage that's slowly killing her knows she's not alone. Knows there's a way out. Knows that the life on the other side is worth fighting for. As the sun set over the campus, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because everything was perfect. Not because all the wounds had healed, but because she'd turned her pain into purpose. She'd transformed her darkest chapter into a story of survival, resilience, and hope. Adrian Voss had tried to erase her, to make her invisible, to turn her into just another forgotten victim of his ambition, but she'd refused to disappear. And in refusing, she'd found her voice, her strength, her truth. The foundation continued to grow, helping hundreds of women escape dangerous situations, rebuild their lives, and reclaim their power. Lillian's information led to additional arrests, dismantling what remained of Adrian's network. Sarah wrote a memoir about her experience, which became a bestseller and brought even more attention to the cause. Natasha went on to specialize in domestic violence law, winning case after case. And Evelyn, she kept showing up, every day, to every support group, every crisis call, Every woman who needed to hear that escape was possible. 5 years after Adrian's conviction, she received one final letter. It was from him. She almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. The letter was brief. I've had a lot of time to think about my choices, about the women I hurt, about the empire I built, and the lives I destroyed. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not the money, not the power, not the status, but the chance to be human, to love genuinely, to build something real instead of something hollow. You were right when you testified. Power can reshape the world, but it cannot rewrite reality. And the reality is that I am exactly where I deserve to be. I hope you found the life you deserve. Adrian. Evelyn read the letter twice, then set it aside. It didn't change anything, didn't erase the pain or the trauma or the years she'd lost, but it confirmed what she'd known all along. Adrian Voss had built his life on illusions, on the belief that he could control everything, that power could substitute for genuine connection, that people were just tools to be wielded, and in the end, his perfect world had crumbled, not because she'd destroyed it, but because it had been built on sand all along. Evelyn never wrote back. She didn't need to. She'd already said everything that mattered. On the witness stand, in the foundation she'd built, in the lives she'd changed. Her answer wasn't in words. It was in the choice she made every single day. To live authentically, to help others, to refuse to let one man's cruelty define her story. And as she stood at the window of her apartment, watching the city lights flicker to life against the darkening sky, Evelyn Carter smiled. She'd walked away from an empire built on lies, and she'd built something better, a life that was finally, completely, undeniably real.